Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? This is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me another episode of Strategy Mob. Today, I have two amazing marketing geniuses with me today. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to jam with me. I have Mr. Dane Saville and the one and only Paul J Daly. Hey, guys, for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now and kind of don't know those amazing origin stories you guys have, if we can start off with a couple origin stories, that'd be really cool. Dane, how did you get into this industry we call the automotive industry?
Mine was actually a lot more indirect and meandering. I don't know how I actually landed in this industry. High school English teacher, Department of Defense communications specialist, advertising executive. Then I got into 33 store group in Raleigh, North Carolina. Worked in their marketing department with our CEO, Dave Sponicky, who's the CEO of Reunion Marketing. He was our marketing director. Had my tenure there. Went to another ad agency working with automotive retail, and then helped form Reunion Marketing. So, and then a little bit of a smattering of professional wrestling here and there, but sort of unrelated to the discussion. But yeah,
I love how you just kind of throw that in there. Like, oh, by the way, just for anybody that's listening, I did this. I was a school teacher and I did some professional wrestling. Like, that's very nonchalant. Thanks for doing that, Dave.
No.
So you did the professional wrestling. Then how do you get into automotive? What was that?
So that was with that transition when I got out of the DOD, was with that 33 store group in Raleigh, North Carolina. So 5 of the 7 co-owners of Reunion Marketing, we all worked together at that 33 store group. I had about between varying degrees of 5 to 10 years working together at that group before some of us parted ways and then reunited again for Reunion Marketing. And that's sort of where that name comes from.
So you got bit by the bug. Now you're in it.
Now I'm in it.
That's how the industry works, man. It's straight up mafia. You get sucked in and you're stuck.
Just when I thought it was something.
Right? It's good. Paul, you got sucked into this. Let's talk a little bit about your origin story, man. How did you get into the automotive industry?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me, first of all. When I got out of, I moved to Syracuse, upstate New York, born and bred in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, best city in the country, or maybe the world. And so I ended up going into a dealership because I needed a job. I'd never been in a dealership my entire life. My family always bought, $200 Volkswagens off the side of the road. Somebody who went to my church was actually a dealer principal of a small Chevy dealer. And I walked in there and he gave me a job as a service advisor. And I said, I don't know anything about cars. And he said, I need people that know about people. I have technicians that know about cars. So that was my first stint in the dealership. I had no idea how it worked. And so I learned and did a very long stint in the service department, probably 4 months before I saw somebody pushing dents out of a car, out of a used car. And I said, well, that looks interesting. And I wanted to start my own business. I honestly don't even know why that got into me, but I wanted more flexibility and I wanted actually something I could use to serve the church and not take a paycheck. So I had a friend who was repairing wheels in Maryland and I went and saw what he was doing. I said, I think I can do that. And the dealer principal said, you know what? I think you'll do a great job at that. He got me a $400 van off the wholesale line, a Chevy Astro. And I just started making mistakes. So from 2003 until 2018, I built an automotive reconditioning company that serviced about 150 dealers and dealer groups across the Northeast. Meanwhile, I started learning about the industry so that I can help dealers with their overarching problems. The reconditioning company was acquired in 2018, and the creative agency I had been incubating within that company then became my main gig. And ever since then, I just like hanging around dealers. The car industry, I think it's one of the best industries in the world, and it's full of some of the very, very best people in the world.
It's the very best people and the most interesting people in the world, right? Like, I mean, seriously, you go to these conferences, like, I consider us to be the island of misfit toys.
Yep.
Like, there's a little bit of everything, right? Hey guys, I want to kick off our conversation today of just kind of asking you, during everything that's going on, let's kind of create a kind of a baseline of what a current norm, looks like for you guys from being a marketing agency. And then I'd like to kind of progress the conversation into kind of how you guys see the new norm is going to develop and how that's going to change the way that we market and assist dealerships in their marketing efforts. Dane, I'm going to start with you, man. What's the current norm for you?
Yeah, it's really, it actually directly aligns with you. We were just talking about a few minutes ago. You talked about process first, and that really is. It's about considering the safety measures being taken to, we always talk about in digital marketing and with reunion marketing. We always talk about be found where demand exists, align your content with consumer intent. You got to align your content with consumer needs and consumer concerns as well. And I think that's a lesson to be taken away from as well. Is that the big messaging that we're putting out there is, do you have at-home test drives? To what degree do you do digital retailing? What are the safety measures that your technicians are taking, your salespeople are taking? What processes do you have in the dealership to help ensure that your consumers are taken care of and their well-being being a first priority?
That's awesome. And I think for a lot of us, that is the case, right? It's like, how do we tell that creative story? And then also, I find it, I'm kind of curious if you guys are running into this too, is also, I've been doing a lot more consulting with dealerships and trying to figure out, exactly how they communicate this process. As an industry, we're not well known for overly communicating. We focus on a singular message of big discounts and huge savings, and come on in and you'll find out what my sales process is. So, Paul, for yourself, what does the current norm look like for you?
The current norm really just looks like constant, breakfast cereal of change. Every day, it's funny, even making any content or putting out content or making decisions at dealerships for what we're going to make and release, the time frame in which you have to make and release is sped up exponentially. 3 weeks ago, you can make a really heartfelt "we're in this together" video and people will be like, "Oh, that's really nice." 2 weeks ago, you could make a heartfelt "we're in this together" video and people will be like, "Okay." If you make one and release it this week, everyone's going to be like, "Yeah, right, we are." Next, so I think that staying in front of that is really what we've been trying to do every day. Just what is the situation now? And we have to make content and messaging for now, and now it used to mean this year, this quarter, maybe seasonally, but now it's this week. And so that really is kind of been our approach and our just recalibration internally. That's just hey, every process that we had to make something and concept it and storyboard it and write it and vet it, edit it, release it and all that stuff. We have to throw that process, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. We have to reinvent it completely and be ready to just fire for what you were just saying, Dane, what are the needs and concerns of the consumer?
Now, I have a question for you guys real quick, because I find it, for me right now, at least up here where I'm at in Canada, close to Toronto, it's kind of a 50-50 split between dealerships that have just full-fledged shut down any marketing efforts of any kind, and then then others that are just running let's say really minimal marketing efforts, and almost like they have no expectation. I feel like dealerships right now are okay, yeah, I'll run a little bit of this. And they seem so, I don't know, deflated. There's just nothing there. They just don't seem like there's a lot of opportunity. And it's okay, well, I guess I should put something out there. How is it for you guys where you are right now? Are dealerships actively in market with messaging, or are they sticking their heads in the sand? Dane, I'll start with you.
For the most part, they're sticking to it. We're doing what we can financially to help dealers out. I sort of, being the face of Reunion, I kind of insulate myself from the financials, so I can't speak to exactly everything that we're doing, and I never want to be involved in that. But I know we're doing what we can for dealers. But fortunately, the vast majority have understood that what we offer with SEO, social media, that's a long-term game. You just don't turn on and off SEO. You can technically turn on and off your paid search, but then you lose ground. You think about your third-party sites are not just completely abandoning their paid search efforts. You're still seeing Auto Trader and Car Gurus showing up in those positions. So by and large, dealers, though, wanting to understand how to best allocate their investment, even during times of cutting it, by and large, they have continued to invest in that with that, what I feel like we've done a good job of communicating the why behind the strategy and the tactics, and then the why behind continuing to implement them.
That's cool. Paul, for yourself, how is it with the clients you're working with right now? Are they still pretty active? Have they kind of stepped back and just kind of paused efforts? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, we've had a really wide range of responses. Some clients, every client has absolutely decimated their traditional spend. Any traditional spend that was left or there, that got brought to zero or very much near zero almost immediately, on all fronts. Now, as far as the level at which people are leaning in on their digital spend really varies. We've gone everywhere from 75% cuts to an increase. So it's we've actually signed several new clients during the course of the pandemic because, as you know, like our agency takes a brand first approach where we try to preach brand, build brand first before we release content. We've definitely come up with an abridged version of that so we can get to market faster. But what we've definitely seen is I would say on average, there's definitely a hesitancy just because it's hard to capitalize on it right now. But a lot of our clients already understand the value, very similar to what Dane just said, is that, the strategies and the angle that Reunion takes are really holistic long-term strategies, just like any good financial investment advisor will tell you. And if you have a good financial advisor, you've already been trained for this time. Right? That you're not freaking out. You understand that when things take a dip is like a great time to lean in and continue with your strategy because this is where the market share is to be had. And coming out of this, look, there's no doubt that the size of sales and size of the industry is going to contract somewhat, but that doesn't mean that a dealer has to sell less cars. They just have to gain market share. So we've really seen a whole gamut. And if I had full control of the clients, and I don't, right? Because everybody makes decisions based on their personal situation. So it's easy to come in from the marketing angle and be like, look, there's so much opportunity, right? If your dollar's going to go a lot further, you make more of an impact. And when we come out of this, you'll be positioned much better. But dealers have to fight such a variety of not only like practical issues, like I'm not open, I'm closed. Look, my budget is getting destroyed. I'm operating at 10% of my revenue projection. Or let's not forget the emotional impact of like, I have to furlough people that I really care about. Right? Everybody has a different crisis personality. So it's easy from a marketing, to come in and pontificate on why you should start spending or keep spending. But trying to be sensitive to all of that and, take it all the way back and answer your original question, just a complete variety from dealers who are spending fresh money to start building a brand and start executing to a strategy, and dealers who had a really great one going and have said, like, we're closed, we're scaling way back.
Yeah, we've also seen, just to kind of piggyback off of Paul there, we've also seen, it depends on what the governor was doing, what the state had decided. I mean, think New York sales were not an essential service as of 3 weeks ago?
Yep.
So it's varying degrees of, and even people that had to reduce or cancel services, they understand that when they can come back, they will. And I'm sure Paul has experienced a lot of the same sort of feedback. Mm-hmm. So it also, that variance of, what does the state government, what did they deemed as essential services, and sort of what other parameters or restrictions were placed upon them. So
for sure,
definitely a very
Pennsylvania just opened for sales and essential service just a couple days ago.
Yeah,
and right today is
No, I think what it is for a lot of us is we're just trying to figure this out, and things are changing. Things are changing daily in some cases, depending on where you live, but I think for a lot of the dealerships out there that may be listening or watching to this right now, and, they agree with us that they do need to be in market. Like they agree that we shouldn't be totally silent, that there is an opportunity both for the maybe small percentage of in-market shoppers that do exist right now, but also the opportunity, to your point, Paul, building brand and coming out of this into a place that's way better off than when we started. I think a lot of dealerships out there are going, well, like, what do I put out there? Like what message, how should I communicate this, and at what frequency and what cost? So maybe let's do this. I'll start with you, Dane. All right, for a dealership out there, that's in that boat, they're 30-40% down in revenue, but they're still doing stuff. Like, when they are still selling cars, they are still servicing cars, and they're like, yeah, I need to be back in market with some messaging. All right, what would you recommend that they go to market right now with a message? What message would that look like?
I mean, the message would just be, we're still in business. We're still here. I mean, I think a lot of people are uncertain in terms of even, really, I mean, if you think about it, even whenever the governor gives a message, that none of it really, truly receives the message, right? And then, of course, there's so many conflicting messages on social media. I mean, just think of all the different debunked things happening that people share and hear without really investigating. So I think it's a matter of being at the forefront of understanding, and I've seen a lot of dealers, especially in Pennsylvania, advocating on behalf for dealerships with their governor. Dealerships being like, listen, like, being in those places, like, be found where demand exists. There are very efficient channels like Facebook, social media, programmatic media, where you can still get that reach, that large reach that traditional had traditionally gotten, and at a very cost efficient way, be able to reach that number of people to stimulate interest and get, kind of push them in market. And it's really just focusing on, yes, here are the facts. We're open. Here's like I said, the messaging of, like, here's your safety. Here's what we're doing to meet you where you're at. So it's really just a matter
isn't that crazy? Like, I mean, think about that for a second. For all three of us, would you ever thought that you would actually be asked to run a campaign that just simply says we're open? like
Right.
In my wildest dream, I would never think of a dealership reaching out and say, hey, Jay, can you run a series of ads for me just to let people know that we're actually open? That's just always assumed. Hey, Paul, for yourself, a dealership that's trying to get back into market, what kind of message would you recommend, that they put out there, or maybe what mediums would you say they'd even start off with?
I think the most important thing right now, open is one, but that's going to become more normal. So that's, again, back to our conversation, like, that's important now. It probably won't be important next week. I think that competence is probably way up on the list before. And when I say competence, I mean able to safely transact in a way that the consumer feels comfortable. I think that that's not a difficult thing to communicate, but I definitely think that is an absolute essential thing to communicate. So showing your safety procedures, letting people know, because you just don't know where people are. Everyone is at a different spot and how worried they are about, getting sick. Me personally, I'm not I'm not really worried about getting sick. I'm convinced I've probably already had it at some point, but also somebody that's like me naturally might live with their parents who might have a health, and you just never know. So some people are very concerned, like, hey, if I make a mistake here, like, somebody I love could die. So, and we have that whole gamut from, like, can't we just open this place back up, to, like, let's be really careful. So I think, right, first and foremost, just competence. It's not hard to do. You could do it on your phone, but people really know it was well thought through. And even though other people are going to start saying it too.
So you're saying, Paul, we should do a video. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like,
oh yeah.
We can't just say it. We have to physically show.
You could do it,
right?
Through pictures. Yeah, I think it's got to be visual to an extent, but you have to show it. And I think just people have to understand that you have a process, that you're really serious about it, and then people can feel better about shopping.
That's almost like,
I'm with you on that.
Go ahead.
No, I'm thinking can we kind of talk this earlier off camera, right, before we kind of started here, is that we had to lead with the process before we can even talk about any type of offer. Dane, you had something you wanted to add to that.
No, I was going to say, it goes back to what Paul was saying earlier about even internally his processes at his company having to quickly pivot and adapt. The message is going to have to be quickly pivoted and adapted to, like you said, the open aspect of that, in the coming weeks, depending on state. It could be, for some states, it could be next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You're going to have to be agile and adapt to your conditions within your market and your state to understand, okay, what is the message that makes the most sense for my dealership, certain, particular.
That's actually a really good point. I mean, you think about it, typically as a creative agency, when we're developing out a message, we typically look at these messages having a shelf life of a bare bones minimum of a 30-day period, right? Now we're talking about messaging and creative that may only have a shelf life of a few days or possibly a week before we're switching it up again. Sure. So, it's like people are asking me like, how is things going for me? Like, am I busy? I'm like, well, me personally, yeah, I'm on the phone all the time. But, my creative team is insanely busy because, we're not creating, a singular set of campaigns for a dealership. We're having to create almost campaigns on a weekly basis to update the creative so that message is out there. Now talking about message, moving into what I'm calling this new norm, and I don't know if it's the right term, if I'm using it right, but I look at it this way, is that we're going to come out of this. We're not just going to go back to business as usual. Just because this is different than how the recession was, and I was in the business during the recession, and that was more of an economics thing, and it happened over a period of time, not like that. This is more of a social impact of how we actually engage with others and how we're choosing to engage with businesses, which is fundamentally just an entirely different process, an entirely different message than we've ever crafted in the past. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts as far as marketing message, all right, coming out of this. How do you see this new norm is going to be for the marketing side of our business? Dane, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it'll be a large push on what degree they can perform digital retailing. I think by and large, a lot of people are going to, there's still always going to be that human, my opinion is there'll always be that human element to dealerships. So I don't think it would ever be just completely like, an AI truck drops off your car and there's never a person you ever see or, get involved with. This is a people business, and that's just my opinion. People can agree, disagree, but I think the degree to which that you can convenience the consumer, the at-home test drives, getting through, different paperwork or pieces or elements of it that normally keep people in the dealership for 5 hours. I just recently bought a car 3 weeks ago and I got there at noon and I didn't leave until 8 p.m.
Oh,
now I'm not saying that's the norm. I'm not saying, to be clear, that's not the norm, but it was just insanity. And part of that was because I think they weren't prepared, because that's whenever there was the uncertainty of if North Carolina was going to be locked down, uncertainty of staff. There was just a lot of things they were dealing with. Doesn't excuse that much time.
And Dane introduced himself to every single person in
I
that
literally
dealership.
met about everyone in the dealership, including the tech that cleaned the car right before they brought it back
Yes.
home. I met everybody. I was just everywhere. So that's outside of the norm. But I think there will be a matter of, there's going to be a lot more push towards different aspects to make the path to purchase available online and reduce the amount of time that they either have to be in your dealership, even at all, if the paperwork any paperwork needs to be signed at the home. I just think be found where demand exists. If the demand's at home, then you take the car to the home.
No, for yourself, Paul, how do you kind of see, that marketing message? Look, at some point in time, our governments are going to say that we can pop our head out of our caves and that we can start exploring and we can go out and do some stuff, and it's not going to be like a light switch turn on. At least I don't think it will be,
No, right.
But, they're definitely the message that we put into market at that time is going to be, I think, considerably different than what we've ever have in the past. How do you kind of see that playing out?
I think that it's going to roll out in phases, like you said. Like the faucet was closed and now it's being opened a little bit at a time, in commerce, and then it's going to be socially, and no one has any idea what that's actually going to look like. So I think the first phase is going to be like we were talking about. We're open, we're safe. Now we can transact in a way that is favorable to you, whatever that is. And obviously digital retailing and following the path of purchase, the more you can do online reduces the friction in that, when being together is a major, exaggerated point of friction right now. So I think that's just going to play its way out. Really, when the shift is going to happen, when we have those table stakes things out and everybody has them now, that's going to be a pretty compressed period of time, and everyone's got to rush to get out there and say, hey, we're open, we can transact like this, we can transact like that. I don't think it's going to be too long though, but coming right out of that, well, we're going to be right back at the same challenge we had, when life was just going on as normal. Is like, well, what are the real differentiators, right? And why am I going to choose you versus you? Which is where I always fall back to, like, your brand has to mean something. Like, you have to have a unique selling proposition that people understand and connect with in order to pick you, who are open and are safe and can digital retail, over the other guy who's open and is safe and can digital retail. So we're going to get there. Is that going to be a 3-month process, a 6-month process before we're back to that same necessity for differentiation? I don't know how long that's going to play out. I know we're going to get back to that, but in the interim, we have to follow that. Like, we're open, we're safe, we're ready to transact on your terms, right? That's going to be the first people to that are going to, just like the first people to anyone in car business, are going to get a little advantage by being first.
I think the key statement you kind of said, there's on your terms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an industry, we have not successfully played that game. You know, we're the ones that have always wanted to hold on to, you know, how someone ultimately buys or shops for a car. You know, we very seldomly have ever wanted to give kind of control of the steering of the process over to the customer. And Paul, I think to your point, you know, the dealerships that are going to be successful right out of the gate are the ones that are going to come out and straight up say, hey, we're flexible. How do you want to do this? You know, like, we don't have only 3 ways to do business with us. We have 14 different ways you can do business with us. What way is most comfortable to you? You know, so with that said, you know, how does that look for us as far as, you know, marketing? Like, do we market 14 different processes? Is it do we market more of the message of brand and less the message of product? What are you guys' thoughts?
I have a couple quick thoughts on that. Number one, 14 is too many.
You just pulled out a random number, man.
No. I think that we need to have options, though, for sure. I think 3. Like, I think we need to give the consumer confidence that we know what we're doing, because most people don't feel like they know what they're doing right now. So I think that having a couple options, 2 or 3, to really define processes, so whatever people are comfortable with, I think we could probably get clever. The Reunion, this is something you guys are great at, really segmenting out your buyers, right? And each buyer is going, if you can identify the segment, you can really speak to. I mean, this is kind of branding 101 too. Like, if you can segment, use your data to get great insights in how people are thinking, reacting, and behaving, well, then on the brand side, you can start to create messaging and content that really connects with them on how they're already thinking. So, I mean, maybe that's kind of a little bit more like advanced class. You have to be really thinking through that to get there. But I think options and letting the customer know that you've thought it through and presenting them with at least enough options that they can pick from, you know, good, better, best for them. Because good, better, best is going to look different for everybody. You know, best for one person might be you show up, like the AI person drops it off, I don't have to see. But still, best for somebody else might be like, look, I still want to come in and see a human when I sign the paperwork and know that I'm good, like my car's insured and the plate's on and all that.
No, and to the point, we got to be flexible, right, Dane?
A large degree of what I think you'll be able to determine that segmentation, those buckets, is, you know, what search trends and behavior will be happening as we come out of this. What are consumers going to be looking for?
Yeah.
What are the queries they're entering? What are the variety of searches they're going to be conducting? And then I think you could, like, you know, if you see a whole lot, like a large spike in volume about, trade in my vehicle or trade in process or trade in, you know, or if consumers are asking about trade in, you go, okay, let's create a message around this and let's capitalize on what the dealership does to help the trade-in process be frictionless and smooth and easy. And maybe that's the degree to which in your specific dealership's market, based on what you see, that's sort of the message you push. Or maybe people just, you know, are looking for like, full online purchase car online. And like, then you go, okay, this in my market, people in a large volume are searching for a full online process. So then you kind of cultivate that message around that. So I don't want to segment it out now. It would be, you know, I think you'd have those options like Paul was referring to, but it kind of like, it would be dictated based on your own market's consumers.
Yeah, really, really, Dane. I mean, you're just talking about like, you're being insight driven, right? Gleaning the insights from the consumer behavior and delivering to that.
Well, talking about segment, I want to throw something at you guys and see if you agree with me, or if you don't, that's cool too. Like either way, it's cool. I was talking to a neighbor of mine the other day who, owns a very old car. It's a weekend car because both him and his wife, all right, take the train into Toronto and then back every single day because the station's just down the street from us. So they've never had the need for actually having a new vehicle. I was asking him the other day as I was taking the trash out from the other side of the street, yelling it out, but I asked him, are you going to go back and take the train? He's like, hell no, I'm not getting back on that thing. He's going to have to go back to work, but he has no intention of taking public transit. And I got thinking about that. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people in our market area that rely regularly on public transit. And I think a large portion of them are going to choose not to do that right out of the gate. And that's a segment of in-market shoppers that we've never had before. And I think there's an opportunity, but what kind of message, what kind of advice would you do to create a message for that specific market? I'll start with you, Paul.
I would say, I would just be very clear with it, right? The people who are never taking transit again, I would just make content about people like disgusting things that happen on public transit, right? And like, how do you know who touched that, who touches that seat back last, right? And like, I would just lean all in on the nasty germophobic mentality, and then just take, the better creative and funny creative you can make around that. It's not going to take long. The best marketing gets people nodding their head. Right. So if you can identify that as a market segment, you just go all in, whether it's memes and funny content, but really driving home to the point where like, I'm never taking that train again. Right. So it's like, never taking that train again, ? And they were like, no, I'm not. And you're like, great. We have the perfect commuter car for you.
Well, I mean, seriously, I think that's what a lot of people are going to have to start thinking about, or are thinking about right now. Dane, for yourself, what do you think about that new segment?
Yeah, I mean, that's why Paul's the master of branding with automotive. I mean, that's just, I love that. What I would do is, I would, with these buyers and Jason, I can't remember the article who wrote it, but there was a major publication that came out with the resurgence of the sedan, like family vehicles. And I think that speaks to your point.
You think like the smaller one, like the Sentra and the Corolla and Civic and stuff like that?
Brian Benstock has really started talking about this. He talked about it a few weeks ago, and I think somebody took that thought and ran with it. He said it a few weeks ago in the Automotive State of the Union. He mentioned that, and then I think somebody kind of like poured a little gas on that.
Took the ball and ran with it.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. I mean, and I think the secondary thing I rely on is reminding people of the value of that vehicle. I mean, people that haven't bought a new vehicle in years might not have been paying attention to the innovations and the things that are happening with vehicles. And I think focusing on new safety features, advanced safety features, active safety features, for SUV buyers or for gas mileage for sedans and coupes. I think there are different selling props that to the average consumer might be like, but to somebody who hasn't bought a car in 12, 13 years, some of these innovations are remarkable because I mean, like I was referring to buying that car just 3 weeks ago. The car my fiance and I were driving was a 2007 RAV4 that you couldn't even have a remote lock.
Of course,
so to her, the idea that you could remote start your vehicle was like, to me, it was nothing. I'm like, of course you have that. She was like, I can start my car with the remote. I was like, with the fob. I was like, yes, you can. But that's because she's had a 2007 RAV4 since 2007 and nothing.
Yeah.
No, seriously, man. I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to be in that exact same boat. Hey, guys, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation today, and I know from a marketing perspective and a branding perspective, we could probably go at this all day long. But, before we kind of end our conversation, I get to ask one of my favorite questions. And I can see Dane's eyes opening up because he knows what's coming. And I think I can Photoshop a wrestling costume on him. I think I'm going to try to do that.
Nacho Libre.
Yes.
Luchador. All the way. Luchador.
That's exactly what it should be. Hey, Dane, I get to ask you my favorite question of the day. What is pissing Dane Saville off?
As a person, politics invading LinkedIn. I go to LinkedIn to not have to see politics. Leave that shit on Facebook. Like, please, for the love of God. That's what's pissing Dane Saville off.
That's a good one, actually. That's really good. All right, Mr. Paul J Daly.
I don't know. I
What's
haven't seen
pissing
a
you
lot
off,
of
man?
political stuff, so I don't know. Maybe it's just Dane's search intent is what's like driving his LinkedIn algorithm.
The algorithm's driving people to
yeah,
piss me off.
yeah. They're like, you know what? I
This
know
guy
how we
brought
can get him. Let's really fire him up. Jason, that's probably the hardest question anybody could ever ask me, because you told me you're going to ask me this, and I'm trying to think of something right now. I literally can't tell you one thing that I'm pissed off about.
I had an immediate answer, and Paul has no answer.
Come
Making
on.
me look
I know,
bad.
that's exactly what I expected.
Dane's pissed off
something like
again.
this to happen.
Dane's like, Paul not having anything.
Paul J Daly not being pissed off.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Paul J Daly is pissed off that Dane can so easily get pissed off.
Yeah, no, but that doesn't piss me off either.
All right, fine. For the whole world to know, nothing pisses Paul J Daly off.
That's not true. Just nothing right now. My inner dialogue is a lot different than my external dialogue.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey guys, for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now and would love to connect with you two fine gentlemen, all right, what is the best way to do so? Dane, I'll start with you.
Of course, on LinkedIn, just don't bring the politics to that. No, but LinkedIn, Reunion Marketing, like Reunite, reunionmarketing.com. Dane, Dane, at reunionmarketing.com is my email. So reach out through any of those mediums.
Awesome. Hey, Paul, for yourself, what is the best way to connect with you, sir?
I would just say go to my website. It's Paul J Daly, DALY.com, PaulJDaly.com. That has a link to all my social profiles. And I put out a weekly podcast called Clarity Compressed on Spotify, iTunes, wherever. And that's kind of my best effort every week, the Clarity Compressed podcast.
It's a great podcast. Everyone listening, it's actually a mandate. If you listen to me, you have to go subscribe to that.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jason.
You guys have a good one. I'll see you.
Gonna go find something to get pissed off about.
Good, go do that.
I gotta go cool off now.